Hey everyone, welcome back to another wild ride through the chaos of Reddit drama, all set against some peaceful Minecraft gameplay to keep things balanced. Today's story is something else. We're diving into a girlfriend who asked for space, then apparently used that space to sleep with their boyfriend's cousin. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's been consistently commenting and supporting this channel. Your engagement means more to me than you might realize. And now, grab a snack, settle in, and let's walk through how a simple break turned into a family implosion that nobody saw coming. Trust me, the deeper we go, the messier it gets. So, I'd been with my girlfriend for 3 years, 3 solid years. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I genuinely thought we were building something real. Then one night she sat me down with this serious look on her face and told me she needed space. She said she wanted to work on herself, figure out who she was outside of the relationship, all that stuff. And honestly, I got it. I mean, it hurt, but I loved her enough to respect what she needed. So I backed off. I gave her the space she asked for. I didn't blow up her phone, didn't show up unannounced, didn't guilt trip her. I just let her breathe. 2 weeks went by. 2 weeks of me wondering if we'd get back together, if she was okay, if this was just temporary or the beginning of the end. I was trying to stay positive, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. And then I opened Instagram. My cousin had posted a series of stories from some weekend getaway. Beach photos, sunset shots, the whole aesthetic vibe. And there she was, my girlfriend, in every single photo, laughing, smiling, wrapped in a towel in one shot, sitting way too close to him in another. My brain just stopped working for a second. I had to scroll back and look again because surely I was seeing things. But nope, that was definitely her. That was definitely my cousin. And they were definitely on a romantic little trip together while I was at home, respecting her need for space. I didn't even think. I just called her. She picked up on the third ring, sounding all casual like nothing was wrong. I asked her point blank what she was doing with my cousin. There was this long silence. Then she sighed like I was inconveniencing her and said we needed to talk in person. We met up the next day at a coffee shop. She looked nervous but also kind of defiant, like she'd already decided she wasn't fully in the wrong. I asked her again, what was going on with my cousin? She took a deep breath and then just said it. They slept together. The night she asked me for the break. She said she'd been confused about her feelings and needed to explore what else was out there. And apparently what else was out there was my own blood relative. I just stared at her. I couldn't even process it. She kept talking, trying to explain, saying it just happened, that she didn't plan it, that she felt terrible, but also like it was something she needed to do to figure herself out. I asked her if she understood what she'd just done. She'd asked me for a break and then immediately hooked up with my cousin. She tried to say it wasn't like that the feelings had been building for a while, and the break just gave her the freedom to act on them. This is where patience finally snapped. I stood up and walked out. I didn't yell, I didn't cause a scene, I just left. But I wasn't done. I needed to hear my cousin's side of this absolute betrayal. So I drove to his place. He opened the door looking sheepish, like he already knew why I was there. I asked him how long this had been going on. He tried to downplay it, said it was just one night that she came onto him and he was drunk, and it just happened. He actually had the nerve to say he thought I'd understand because she was the one who initiated it. I told him we were done. No more family dinners, no more hangouts. Nothing. He could explain to everyone else why. He tried to argue, said I was overreacting, that it wasn't that serious. I left before I said something I'd regret. Then came the breaking point. I figured at least my family would have my back. I mean, this was a clear-cut case of betrayal on multiple fronts, right? Wrong. I told my parents what happened. My mum looked uncomfortable but didn't say much. My dad, though, my dad actually told me I needed to man up and forgive family. He said my cousin made a mistake, that my girlfriend was the real problem, and that family sticks together no matter what. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked him if he was seriously taking my cousin's side after he slept with my girlfriend. He said I was being dramatic and that holding grudges would only hurt me in the long run. My aunt called me later that week. She'd heard about everything, and instead of offering support, she lectured me about forgiveness and said my cousin felt terrible and that I should be the bigger person. The bigger person. Like I was somehow in the wrong for being upset that my girlfriend and my cousin hooked up and then lied about it. It gets absurd. My girlfriend started texting me. At first it was apologies. She said she missed me, that she'd made a huge mistake, that she wanted to try again. I ignored her. Then the text changed. She started saying that technically what she did didn't count because we were on a break. She actually used that line. We were on a break. Like that justified anything. Like the fact that she'd asked for the break specifically so she could hook up with my cousin didn't make it 10 times worse. She said I was being unfair, that she'd been honest with me, and that if I really loved her, I'd be willing to work through this. I blocked her number. I blocked my cousin. I blocked half my family who kept trying to mediate or guilt me into letting it go. And then I made a decision. I couldn't stay in that town anymore. Every corner reminded me of her. Every family gathering would be awkward and painful. So I started applying for jobs in other cities. Within 2 months, I had an offer 3 states away. I packed up my life and left. My mum cried when I told her I was moving. She asked if I was really going to let this ruin my relationship with the family. I told her the family had already ruined it by choosing my cousin over me. My dad didn't say much. I think part of him knew he'd messed up, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. I've been in my new city for 6 months now. I've got a fresh start, new friends, a better job. My ex tried reaching out one more time a few months ago through a mutual friend. She wanted to know if I'd be willing to talk. I said no, there's nothing left to say. She made her choice, my cousin made his, my family made theirs, and I made mine. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this next part, it gets even messier. So where were we? Oh right, I just found out my break was actually a betrayal buffet, and my family thinks I'm the problem. Some people told me later that I overreacted, that I should have tried to forgive and move on. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the cheating. It was about the fact that she planned it. She asked for a break so she could hook up with my cousin guilt-free, and then she tried to use that same break as an excuse when I found out. And my family, the people who were supposed to have my back, told me to get over it. They chose keeping the peace over doing what was right. I don't regret leaving. I don't regret cutting them off, because at the end of the day, I learned who actually valued me and who just valued the idea of family harmony more than my feelings. And that's a lesson worth learning, even if it hurts. The wildest part is my cousin apparently got dumped by my ex a few months after I left. Turns out she got bored of him once the thrill of sneaking around was gone. He tried to reach out to me after that. Sent me this long apology text about how he realized he messed up and missed having me in his life. I didn't respond. Some bridges once burned aren't worth rebuilding. I'm doing fine now. Better than fine, actually. I've got a life that's completely mine, with people who actually respect me. And honestly, that's worth more than any relationship or family connection that comes with conditions. But the romantic drama and sabotage doesn't end here, because the next person discovered their partner had a secret backup plan for them all along. I thought we were solid, like genuinely solid. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and yeah, we had our ups and downs like any couple. But I loved him. I thought he loved me too. I thought I was his person, the one he chose, the one he wanted. Turns out, I wasn't even his first pick. It started on a completely normal Tuesday night. We were hanging out at his place, watching some forgettable Netflix show, and his phone kept buzzing on the coffee table. I wasn't trying to snoop or anything, but the screen kept lighting up, and after the 5th notification in like 3 minutes, I glanced over. The message preview was short, just a few words from someone named Jake in a group chat called The Boys, and those few words completely derailed my life. How's Plan B doing? I stared at it for a second, trying to make sense of it. Plan B, like the morning after pill, was this some weird inside joke I didn't know about? My boyfriend noticed me looking and quickly grabbed his phone, laughing it off like it was nothing. He said something about his friends being idiots and how they give everyone stupid nicknames. I wanted to believe him. I really did, but something in my gut told me to push. So I asked him directly, what does Plan B mean? Who are they talking about? He got defensive immediately, which was my first real red flag. He said it was just guy talk, that I wouldn't get it, and that I was overreacting. That made me angrier. I told him if it was so harmless, he should have no problem showing me the context. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I didn't yell, I didn't grab his phone, I just looked at him and said, if you don't show me right now, we're done. I meant it. He could see that I meant it. So he sighed, unlocked his phone, and handed it over like he was giving me a loaded gun. And honestly, that's pretty much what it was. I opened the group chat. There were 7 guys in it. All his closest friends, people I'd met at parties and barbecues, people who smiled at me and made small talk and acted like they liked me. I scrolled up looking for context, and what I found made my stomach drop. They were talking about me. They'd been talking about me for months, and the nickname Plan B, that wasn't about birth control. It was about me being his backup plan, his second choice, his consolation prize. One of the messages from a few months back laid it all out. My boyfriend, the man I loved, had apparently told his friends that he'd originally asked out my friend Emma. Emma and I had been close since college. She's gorgeous, confident, successful, everything I've always been a little insecure about. And according to this chat, he'd been into her first. He'd made his move, she'd turned him down. And then he'd pivoted to me, like I was just there, available, easy. The messages got worse. They weren't just calling me Plan B, they were rating me, comparing me to Emma, joking about how I was good enough but not ideal. One guy wrote, solid 6 out of 10, decent backup. Another said, at least she's low maintenance. There were comments about my weight, about my job, about how I dressed. They dissected me like I was some kind of science project they were all workshopping together. And my boyfriend? He was right there in the middle of it. He wasn't defending me. He wasn't shutting it down. He was laughing along. He'd even added a few of his own comments. One message from him said, she's sweet, but yeah, Emma would have been the dream. Another said, she doesn't know, so it's whatever. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, scrolling through message after message, my hands shaking, my vision blurring. This man, the man I'd introduced to my family, the man I'd talked about a future with, had been treating me like a joke behind my back for our entire relationship. And his friends, these guys who acted like they respected me, had been in on it the whole time. He tried to explain. He stumbled over his words, saying it was just locker room talk, that guys say stupid things to sound cool, that he didn't actually mean any of it. He swore he loved me. He said the group chat was just a place to blow off steam and that none of it reflected how he really felt. He even tried to turn it around on me, saying I was invading his privacy and that everyone says things in private they don't mean. I looked at him like he was a stranger. Because in that moment, he was. I asked him one question. Did you ask Emma out first? He froze. He tried to dodge it, tried to say it didn't matter, but I just repeated the question. Finally, he admitted it. Yes, he'd asked her out. She'd said no. And then, a few weeks later, he'd asked me out instead. He tried to spin it like it was fate, like he realized I was the better match. But I wasn't buying it. The messages didn't lie. I was the backup. I was Plan B. I always had been. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood up, grabbed my bag, and told him we were done. He panicked. He started begging, saying he'd delete the group chat, that he'd apologize to his friends, that he'd do anything. I told him the only thing he needed to do was stay away from me. He followed me to the door, still pleading, but I walked out and didn't look back. When I got home, I sat on my couch in complete silence for what felt like hours. I kept replaying every moment of our relationship in my head, wondering how many times he'd looked at me and thought about her instead, wondering if he ever really wanted me at all, or if I was just convenient. The anger started to build slowly, like a pressure cooker heating up, and by the time the sun came up, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I went back through the screenshots I'd taken of the group chat. I hadn't planned on taking them initially, but some instinct told me I'd need proof, and I was right. I cropped out the phone numbers but left everything else intact. The nicknames, the ratings, the cruel jokes, the messages from my now ex-boyfriend laughing along with his friends. Then I posted the whole thing to my Instagram story with one caption: if you're going to call someone Plan B, maybe don't leave your phone unlocked. The response was immediate. My friends started messaging me within minutes, horrified, supportive, furious on my behalf. Emma called me in tears, apologizing even though she had nothing to apologize for. She had no idea he'd even asked her out, let alone that he'd been holding on to that rejection while dating me. She told me she thought he was a creep and that I deserved so much better. But then his friends started messaging me. They tried to defend themselves, saying it was taken out of context, that I was being dramatic. One of them called me a psycho for posting private messages. I blocked every single one of them. Then his mum called. She didn't yell, but her tone was ice cold. She told me I was cruel for humiliating her son publicly, that I should have handled it privately, that airing dirty laundry on social media was classless. I almost laughed. Her son and his friends had spent months humiliating me in private, but apparently I was the villain for letting people see the truth. I told her if she raised her son better, maybe he wouldn't have given me anything to post. Then I hung up. My ex tried to reach out too. He sent me paragraphs of texts alternating between apologies and anger. He said I'd ruined his reputation, that his friends were mad at him now, that his family thought he was a jerk. He said I was vindictive and that I'd regret this. I didn't respond. I just blocked him and moved on. The story blew up more than I expected. People I barely knew were reaching out, sharing it, commenting on how messed up the whole situation was. A few of his friends' girlfriends even broke up with them after seeing the screenshots. Apparently, I wasn't the only one being talked about in that chat. Turns out, when you treat people like they're disposable, it eventually catches up with you. It's been a few months now, and I'm honestly doing better than I thought I would. I'm not gonna lie, the first few weeks were rough. I kept wondering if I'd overreacted, if posting the screenshots was too far, if I should have just walked away quietly, but then I'd remember how it felt to read those messages, to see myself reduced to a number, a backup option, a punchline, and I'd remember that I didn't do anything wrong. He did. I heard through mutual friends that he's been trying to date again, but word gets around. Turns out when you publicly out yourself as the kind of guy who ranks women with his buddies, people tend to steer clear. His friends aren't talking to him much anymore either. I guess nobody likes being exposed as shallow and cruel, even when it's true. As for me, I'm focusing on myself. I'm reconnecting with friends, picking up hobbies I'd let slide, remembering what it feels like to not constantly wonder if I'm enough. Because here's the thing I've learned. I was always enough. He just wasn't. And honestly, he can keep his group chat and his rating system and his fragile ego. I'm nobody's plan B. Not anymore. Not ever again. I was genuinely proud of him when he told me he was starting therapy. My boyfriend had been dealing with anxiety for years, and watching him finally take that step felt like a turning point. He'd always been the type to brush things off, to say he was fine even when he clearly wasn't. So when he came home one day and said he'd found a therapist he really connected with, I was relieved. I thought we were finally getting somewhere. For 6 months, things seemed better. He'd go to his sessions every Tuesday afternoon, and he'd come back lighter somehow, like he'd set down something heavy. He didn't talk much about what they discussed, but I didn't push. Therapy is personal. I respected his privacy. All I cared about was that he was getting help, that he was working through whatever had been weighing him down. I genuinely thought this was the beginning of us building something healthier together. Then one Tuesday, my meeting ended early. I figured I'd surprise him and pick him up from his session instead of having him take the bus. I knew roughly where the office was, so I pulled into the parking lot about 10 minutes before his appointment was supposed to end. I parked near the entrance and scrolled through my phone, waiting. When I glanced up, I saw him walking out of the building with someone, a woman. They were talking, smiling, and then they hugged. And it wasn't a polite professional hug. It was long, too long. The kind of hug where you lean into someone, where your hands linger on their back. The kind of hug that made my stomach drop. I sat there staring, trying to process what I was seeing. When he finally let go and turned toward the parking lot, he spotted my car. His face went pale. He walked over, got in, and immediately started talking like nothing had happened. I asked him who that was. He said it was his therapist. I asked why they were hugging like that. He shrugged and said she was just a warm person, that it was nothing weird. But his voice had that edge to it, that defensive tone he gets when he knows he's in the wrong. I didn't say anything else on the drive home. My mind was racing. Something about the whole interaction felt off, and I couldn't shake it. So that night, after he went to bed, I did what any rational person would do. I Googled her. Her name was on the therapy practice's website, and from there it took about 2 minutes to find her Facebook profile. I scrolled through her photos and my heart sank. There, buried in albums from 6 or 7 years ago, were pictures of her and my boyfriend, together, at parties, at someone's graduation, kissing in a photo booth. She was his ex-girlfriend from college. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like the floor had just disappeared beneath me. He'd been seeing his ex-girlfriend for therapy, for 6 months, and he never thought to mention it. The next morning, I confronted him. I showed him the photos. He didn't even try to deny it. He admitted it right away, but he said it wasn't a big deal. He said they reconnected randomly, that she'd become a therapist, and when he mentioned needing help, she offered. He insisted it was purely professional now, that whatever they had in college was ancient history. He said I was overreacting, that I was making something out of nothing. But the way he said it, the way he couldn't quite look me in the eye, told me everything I needed to know. I asked him if he seriously thought it was appropriate to be in therapy with someone he used to date. He got defensive. He said she was good at her job, that she understood him in a way other therapists didn't. I told him that was exactly the problem. That's when he started yelling. He said I didn't understand how hard it was for him to open up to people, that I was trying to ruin the one thing that was actually helping him. I told him this wasn't therapy. This was him spending an hour a week with his ex and calling it progress. This is where it gets absurd. I couldn't just let it go. The whole thing felt like a massive ethical violation, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. So I called the therapist's office. I explained the situation to the receptionist, who transferred me to a supervisor. I told them everything. That the therapist was treating her ex-boyfriend, that I'd seen them hugging in a way that didn't seem professional, that my boyfriend had admitted to their past relationship. The supervisor sounded horrified. She thanked me for bringing it to their attention and said they'd look into it immediately. When my boyfriend found out what I'd done, he lost it. He screamed at me. He said I'd ruined everything, that I'd sabotaged his mental health, that I was controlling and jealous. He said I had no right to interfere with his therapy. I told him he had no right to lie to me for 6 months. He packed a bag and left. He stayed with a friend, and for a few days I didn't hear from him. Then came the breaking point. A week later, I got a text from him. The therapist had lost her license. The board had investigated, found the relationship inappropriate, and revoked her ability to practice. He blamed me entirely. He said I'd destroyed her career over nothing, that I'd taken away the one person who actually understood him. He said I was vindictive and cruel, and that he couldn't be with someone like that. I told him the only person who destroyed anything was him, the moment he decided to lie. We broke up. He moved out completely, and I thought that was the end of it. Months went by. I tried to move on. I started seeing someone new, someone who didn't come with a built-in disaster waiting to happen. I was doing okay, and then one night I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a mutual friend's story. It was a photo from a dinner party, and there they were, my ex and his former therapist, together, smiling, her hand on his arm. They were back together. I stared at that photo for a long time, trying to figure out how to feel. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of having been right. Tired of knowing that the whole time he'd been telling me I was paranoid. He'd been proving exactly why I had every reason to be. Looking back, I don't regret calling the board. She shouldn't have been treating him. He shouldn't have lied. And honestly, the fact that they ended up together just confirmed what I already knew. It was never about therapy. It was never about healing. It was about him wanting an excuse to keep her in his life and her being willing to risk her entire career for it. They deserved each other. And I deserved better than being gaslit for 6 months while he pretended his weekly sessions with his ex were somehow helping him grow. So, yeah. That's how I found out my boyfriend's therapist was also his ex-girlfriend. And that's how I learned that sometimes the red flags are waving right in front of you, and the only mistake you can make is ignoring them. So there I was, thinking I was being the supportive boyfriend. My girlfriend sat me down one evening and told me she needed some time apart to find herself. She said she felt lost, like she didn't know who she was outside of our relationship anymore. And honestly, I got it. We'd been together for almost 3 years, practically inseparable. I loved her, so even though it hurt like hell, I told her I understood. I said I'd give her all the space she needed. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being mature about it. The first few days were rough. I kept checking my phone, hoping she'd text. I'd see something funny and instinctively reach for my phone to send it to her. Then remember we were on a break. My apartment felt too quiet. I threw myself into work, hung out with friends, tried to keep busy. I told myself this was temporary. She just needed time. We'd come back stronger. That's what people always say, right? About a week in, I was at my parents' place for Sunday dinner. My mum was chatting about her week, talking about errands and who she'd run into at the grocery store. Then she mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that she'd seen my girlfriend at my cousin Jake's apartment building. She was carrying groceries inside. My mom thought it was nice that Jake was helping her out during our break, being a good friend to both of us. I froze mid-bite. Jake's apartment? Why would she be at Jake's place? They weren't even that close. I mean, we all hung out at family gatherings, but it's not like they had some separate friendship I didn't know about. My mum noticed my expression and asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about needing to check on something and left right after dinner. The entire drive to Jake's apartment, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she just stopped by to grab something. Maybe she was dropping off something of mine that Jake had borrowed. Maybe my mum got it wrong. But when I pulled into the parking lot and saw her car sitting there, right next to Jake's truck, my stomach dropped. Her car had been there long enough that there was a parking ticket on the windshield from street cleaning day. This wasn't a quick visit. I sat in my car for a minute staring at that ticket, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I got out and walked up to Jake's unit. My hands were shaking when I knocked. I heard movement inside, some shuffling, then the door opened. Jake stood there, shirtless, looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not surprised, not guilty, just this casual smirk like I'd interrupted his video game session or something. Before I could say anything, I heard her voice from inside. My girlfriend appeared behind him in the hallway, wearing pajamas. Not her going out clothes, not her gym outfit. Pajamas. The cute matching set I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked startled to see me, but then her face shifted into something defensive. I asked what was going on. My voice came out calmer than I felt, which somehow made it worse. She immediately started explaining that Jake had offered her a place to stay while she figured things out. She said she needed to be away from our apartment, away from our shared space, and Jake had a spare room. She emphasized spare room like that made everything okay. They were just roommates. He was just helping her out. It was totally innocent. Jake hadn't said a word yet. He just stood there with that same smirk, leaning against the doorframe like he was enjoying this. When I looked at him, he shrugged and said he was just being a good cousin, helping family. The way he said it made my blood boil. I asked her why she didn't mention this when she asked for space. Why she didn't think it was worth telling me she was moving in with my cousin. She got defensive, saying she didn't owe me an explanation about where she stayed, that the whole point of space was that we weren't together right now. She accused me of tracking her down, of not respecting her boundaries. Jake chimed in, agreeing with her, saying I was being possessive, and this was exactly why she needed space from me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked at both of them standing there, united against me, and something just clicked. I told her she was right, she didn't owe me anything anymore. I turned around and left. I heard her calling after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. That's when everything unraveled. Within an hour, my family group chat absolutely exploded. Jake had apparently posted something vague about family drama and respecting people's choices. My aunt, Jake's mum, jumped in immediately defending him. She said I was being controlling and possessive, that my girlfriend was an adult who could stay wherever she wanted. Other family members started chiming in. Some were confused, asking what happened. Others took sides without even knowing the full story. My mom tried to calm things down, saying we should talk about this privately, but it was too late. The chat had become a war zone. My girlfriend even texted me directly, furious that I'd caused all this drama. She said I was making her look bad to my family, that she had every right to accept help from a friend, and I was turning it into something it wasn't. She called me controlling, insecure, jealous. She said this was exactly why she needed space, because I couldn't handle her having any independence. I sat there reading these messages, watching my family tear itself apart in the group chat, and I felt completely numb. The person I loved was living with my cousin. My family was calling me the bad guy, and somehow I was the one who needed to apologize. I didn't respond to her texts. I didn't defend myself in the family chat. I just muted it all and sat in my quiet apartment, feeling like I was living in someone else's nightmare. The thing that got me was how calculated it all seemed. She didn't just need space, she needed space at my cousin's apartment specifically. She didn't think to mention it because she knew exactly how it would look. And when confronted, instead of acknowledging how messed up the situation was, she went on the offensive, made me the villain for daring to question it. I blocked both of them that night. Her number, Jake's number, both gone. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there and be gaslit into thinking I was crazy for being upset that my girlfriend moved in with my male cousin the second we went on a break. Some of my family members reached out privately, asking me to forgive and forget, to be the bigger person. I didn't respond to those either. Here's where it gets absurd. About 2 months later, Jake called me from a different number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. He wanted to talk, he said. He wanted to explain. I asked him what there was to explain, and he got quiet. Then he admitted that my ex had dumped him. Apparently, whatever they had going on fell apart pretty quickly once the thrill of sneaking around was gone. He said she'd moved out, moved back to her parents' place, and now he was realizing he'd messed up. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to make things right between us because we were family. I laughed, actually laughed out loud on the phone. I asked him if he seriously thought I'd forgive him just because his little relationship imploded. He started backtracking, saying it wasn't like that. They really were just roommates at first. Things just developed naturally. I cut him off and told him I didn't care. He made his choice. She made hers. I'd made mine. I hung up. He tried texting me after that. Long paragraphs about family being forever, about how he'd made a mistake, about how he hoped we could move past this. I blocked that number too. My aunt kept pushing in the family chat, saying I was holding a grudge, that I needed to forgive because family is family. Other relatives joined in, saying I was being stubborn, that everyone makes mistakes. What they didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, was that this wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about self-respect. My girlfriend didn't just ask for space. She asked for space and immediately moved in with my cousin. They both looked me in the eye and told me I was crazy for being upset about it. My family took their side, and now that it blew up in Jake's face, suddenly I was supposed to welcome him back with open arms because blood is thicker than water or whatever. The family gatherings got weird after that. I still showed up to the big ones, holidays and birthdays, because I wasn't going to let them run me off. But I kept my distance from Jake. Didn't speak to him unless absolutely necessary. My aunt would make pointed comments about forgiveness and moving on. I'd smile and change the subject. Some family members got it, respected my boundaries. Others thought I was being dramatic. My ex tried to reach out a few times too. Mutual friends told me she'd asked about me, said she felt bad about how things ended, wanted closure. I didn't give it to her. There was nothing left to say. She'd shown me exactly who she was, and I believed her. They handed over the rope and tied the knot themselves, honestly. The worst part was watching my family continue to defend them even after everything came out. Even after it became clear that, yeah, they'd hooked up. Yeah, it had started pretty much immediately after we went on break. My aunt still maintained that I was overreacting, that people's feelings are complicated, that I should be happy she found someone who made her happy, even if it was Jake. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. I stopped trying to make them understand. You can't force people to see something they're determined to ignore. I focused on myself, on healing, on rebuilding. I started going to therapy, which helped more than I expected. My therapist pointed out that the trash basically took itself out. My girlfriend showed me she wasn't loyal. My cousin showed me he wasn't trustworthy. And my extended family showed me who would actually have my back when things got messy. It's been over a year now. I'm doing better. I'm dating someone new. Someone who actually respects me and doesn't play mind games. I've built stronger relationships with the family members who supported me through everything. As for Jake and my ex, I have no idea what they're up to, and I genuinely don't care. They're part of a chapter I've closed. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting them off, if I think I was too harsh. I don't, because at the end of the day, they didn't just betray me once. They gaslit me about it, turned my family against me, and then expected me to just get over it when their little situation fell apart. That's not something you come back from. That's not family. That's just people who share DNA. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Moving on from betrayal is hard enough, but what happens when the betrayal comes with a destination wedding twist? I was 3 months away from marrying the love of my life. Or at least, that's what I thought. We'd been together for 5 years, engaged for one, and everything seemed perfect. He was excited about the wedding. I was excited about the wedding. Our families were excited. It all felt like it was falling into place exactly how it was supposed to. Then he told me he wanted to do a bachelor trip to Vegas with his boys. Totally normal, right? I wasn't one of those controlling fiancés who freaked out about bachelor parties. I trusted him. He'd earned that trust over 5 years, so I told him to have fun, be safe, and send me pictures of whatever ridiculous stuff they got up to. He kissed me, told me he loved me, and headed out for the weekend. The first day went fine. He texted me a few times, sent a photo of the group at dinner. The usual stuff. I was happy for him. He deserved a fun weekend with his friends before we started our life together. I spent the weekend with my bridesmaids, planning last-minute wedding details, completely oblivious to what was actually happening in Vegas. Then I got a text from Jake, one of our mutual friends who was on the trip. Just a photo, no context. I opened it thinking it'd be something funny, maybe them drunk at a casino or doing something stupid. Instead, I saw my fiancé, down on one knee, on a rooftop, with a ring box open, and the woman in front of him wasn't me. I stared at my phone for a solid minute trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe it was a joke, some kind of weird prank. But the longer I looked, the more real it became. That was definitely him. That was definitely a proposal. And that woman looked way too shocked and happy for it to be anything but genuine. I called him immediately. It rang and went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted him the photo with just a question mark. Nothing else. Just that one symbol that carried about 1,000 questions. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. I answered and didn't say anything. I just waited. He started talking fast, his voice shaking, asking where I got that photo, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that he could explain. I told him he had exactly one chance to tell me the truth, or I was hanging up and he'd never hear from me again. That's when everything unraveled. He admitted it. He'd proposed to his coworker, a woman he'd been working closely with for the past year. He said he'd been feeling confused about us, about whether he was making the right choice, and he thought maybe if he proposed to her, he'd know for sure how he felt. He actually said that, like proposing to another woman was some kind of emotional litmus test. I asked him if she said yes. He went quiet. Then he admitted she did. She said yes. He'd proposed to another woman, she'd accepted, and he was still planning to come home and marry me in 3 months like nothing happened. I hung up. I didn't yell, I didn't cry yet. I just hung up and sat there in complete silence, trying to process the fact that my entire future had just imploded via a single accidental photo. My phone started blowing up. Calls from him, texts, voicemails. I ignored all of it. I called the wedding venue and cancelled everything. I called the caterer, the photographer, the florist. I sent a mass text to the bridesmaids and groomsmen saying the wedding was off and I'd explain later. Then I called a locksmith and had them come change the locks on our apartment. He had a key. He wasn't getting back in. And here's where it gets absurd. He showed up at my door 2 days later. I only knew because he started pounding on it, yelling my name, begging me to let him in. I opened the door but kept the chain on. He looked terrible, eyes red, hair a mess, like he hadn't slept since Vegas. He immediately started crying, saying he'd made the worst mistake of his life, that the proposal to her didn't feel right, that the moment she said yes, he realized I was the one he actually wanted to marry. I just stared at him. The audacity was genuinely impressive. He'd proposed to another woman to test his feelings for me, and now that his little experiment failed, he expected me to just take him back and pretend it never happened. I told him to leave. He begged. He said he'd do anything, go to therapy, cut off contact with her, whatever I needed. I asked him if he'd told her it was over. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He hadn't. He proposed to 2 women and was apparently trying to figure out which one to actually go through with. I shut the door in his face and locked it. He stayed out there for another 20 minutes before finally leaving. But that wasn't even the worst part. His family started calling me. His mum, his sister, even his dad, all of them trying to convince me to forgive him. They said cold feet were normal, that he just panicked, that everyone makes mistakes before a big commitment. His mom actually told me I was being too harsh and that if I really loved him, I'd understand he was just scared. I told her he didn't have cold feet. He had a whole second relationship and a backup fiancé. She said I was exaggerating. His co-worker, the other woman, had no idea about me. Turns out he'd told her he was single. She found out about me through the grapevine at work after he got back and completely spiraled. She called me, crying, apologizing, saying she had no idea. I actually felt bad for her. She was a victim in this too. We ended up talking for over an hour. She'd said yes to his proposal thinking they were starting a life together. Instead, she found out she was a test run for his commitment issues. I decided I was done being quiet about it. I posted the photo Jake had sent me along with screenshots of my ex's texts admitting what he did. I didn't tag him, didn't name him, but mutual friends knew exactly who it was. The post blew up. People were horrified. His family was furious with me for airing private business. I didn't care. He humiliated me. He deserved to face the consequences. The fallout at his work was apparently brutal. HR got involved because he'd been pursuing a relationship with a coworker while engaged to someone else and lying to both of them. He got demoted, lost his team lead position. The other woman quit entirely, couldn't stand being around him. And me? I moved on. It took time. I'm not going to pretend I just bounced back overnight, but I realized something important. If he was willing to propose to another woman to test his feelings for me, he never actually loved me the way I deserved. Real love doesn't need a backup plan. It doesn't need comparison shopping. It just is. I heard through mutual friends that he tried dating again a few months later, but word had gotten around about what he did. Turns out most people don't want to date someone with a track record of double proposals and compulsive lying. His family eventually stopped trying to get me to forgive him. I think even they realized how indefensible his actions were once the full story came out. I'm doing better now. I'm dating someone new, someone who doesn't need to propose to another person to figure out if they want to be with me. And honestly, I dodged a massive bullet. Imagine if I'd married him and this happened later. At least I found out who he really was before I legally tied myself to him. The wildest part is he sent me a letter about a year later, a handwritten apology saying he understood why I couldn't forgive him and that he hoped I was happy. It felt performative, like he was trying to absolve himself more than actually apologize. I threw it away. Some apologies are too little, too late. Some people get cold feet, others get cold hearts and a backup bride. But imagine checking your mail and finding out your past just RSVP'd to your present. I'd been over him for 2 years, fully, completely over him. I had a new boyfriend, a new life, and honestly, I barely thought about my ex anymore. So when a fancy cream-colored envelope showed up in my mailbox, I didn't think twice about it. I glanced at the name on the front and froze. It was addressed to my ex, at my address, an address he'd never lived at. We'd broken up before I even moved to this apartment. He had no reason to be getting mail here, no reason to have this address at all. I stood there staring at the envelope, confused and a little annoyed. Part of me wanted to just write return to sender and be done with it. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was a wedding invitation. His wedding invitation. Elegant script, expensive cardstock, the whole thing. He was getting married, and not just to anyone. He was marrying the girl he'd told me not to worry about when we were together. The girl whose name came up a little too often. The girl he swore was just a friend from work. The girl I'd asked about multiple times because something felt off, and every time he'd made me feel crazy for even questioning it. I flipped the invitation over, and that's when I saw the handwritten note tucked inside. It was in his handwriting. It said, "Hope you can make it, no hard feelings." I read it 3 times, each time feeling a fresh wave of rage. Hope I can make it, no hard feelings, like we'd had some amicable split and stayed friends, like he hadn't gaslit me for months about this exact woman, like he didn't know exactly what he was doing by sending this to me. I sat down on my couch and just stared at the invitation. My boyfriend came over that evening and I showed it to him. He looked confused. He asked why my ex even had this address. I told him I had no idea, that it had to be intentional. My boyfriend suggested I just ignore it, throw it away, move on. But I couldn't. The pettiness of it, the audacity of sending me an invitation to watch him marry the girl he cheated on me with. It was too much, so I did something I'm not entirely proud of. I RSVP'd, yes. My boyfriend thought I was being weird. He asked why I'd want to go to my ex's wedding, why I'd give him the satisfaction. I told him it wasn't about giving him satisfaction. It was about showing up, looking incredible, and reminding him exactly what he lost. My boyfriend didn't love the idea, but he didn't try to stop me either. I think part of him understood that I needed to do this for myself. The day of the wedding, I spent hours getting ready. I wore a dress that was just on the right side of appropriate, but definitely made a statement. Deep red, perfectly tailored, the kind of dress that turns heads. I did my makeup flawlessly, styled my hair, and when I looked in the mirror, I felt powerful. I felt like I'd already won whatever twisted game he thought he was playing. The wedding was at some upscale venue outside the city. I walked in alone, signed the guest book, and found a seat toward the back. I could feel people looking at me. A few faces I recognized from when we were together. They looked surprised to see me. Good. The ceremony started, and I watched as he stood at the altar waiting for his bride. When she walked down the aisle, I saw her glance in my direction. Her face went pale. She knew who I was. She absolutely knew. The ceremony was fine. Standard vows, standard readings, nothing special. But I could see him. He kept glancing toward the back of the room, like he was trying to confirm I was actually there. He looked uncomfortable, nervous. I smiled. The reception was where things got interesting. I mingled, made polite conversation, sipped champagne. His bride kept staring at me from across the room. At one point, she whispered something to him, and he looked over at me with this tight, fake smile. He didn't come over. He didn't say hello. He avoided me the entire night, which honestly made the whole thing even more satisfying. Then came the toasts. His best man went first, told some boring story about college, then the maid of honor talking about how perfect they were together, and then the mic was open for anyone else who wanted to say something. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the champagne, maybe it was the 2 years of unresolved anger. But I stood up, walked to the front, and took the microphone. I started by saying congratulations, that I was so happy for them, that they clearly found exactly what they were looking for. The room was quiet, everyone listening. Then I said I'd known the groom for a long time, that we had history, and that I'd learned so much from our relationship. I said I learned the importance of trust, of honesty, of not letting people make you feel crazy for noticing the obvious. I said I hoped they'd both learn those lessons too, especially since their relationship started while he was still teaching me those very lessons. The room went completely silent. You could hear people shifting in their seats. I looked directly at him, smiled, and said I genuinely wished them all the best. Then I put the microphone down and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't rush. I walked calmly to my car, got in, and drove home. My phone started buzzing before I even made it back to the city. Texts from him, paragraph after paragraph. He was furious. He said I'd embarrassed him in front of everyone, that I'd ruined his wedding, that I was petty and vindictive and pathetic. He said I clearly wasn't over him if I felt the need to show up and make a scene. I read every message and then I blocked his number. My boyfriend was waiting for me when I got home. He asked how it went. I told him everything. He laughed. He said it was the most chaotic thing I'd ever done, but that he got it. He understood why I needed to do it. And honestly, I felt lighter, like I'd finally closed a door that had been left open for too long. Looking back, was it petty? Absolutely. Was it the mature, healthy thing to do? Probably not. But did it feel amazing to stand in that room and remind him that I wasn't someone he could just erase or mock with a smug little wedding invite? Yes, it absolutely did. He wanted me to feel small, to feel like he'd won by moving on and getting married. Instead, I showed up, looked incredible, and made it clear that I was the one who got away. And judging by the 47 angry texts, I'd say the message landed. Petty? Maybe. Legendary? Absolutely. But while some exes send wedding invites as a flex, others send their partners on work trips that come with a corporate +1. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who had to worry about a work wife. That whole concept always seemed so harmless to me, you know? Just a colleague you're close with, someone you grab coffee with between meetings, someone who makes the workday less miserable. My husband traveled a lot for his job, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, and he'd mentioned his work wife a handful of times over the years. Her name was Sarah. She was in his department. They'd get lunch together when he was at the regional office. It all sounded so normal, so platonic. I had zero reason to be concerned. He'd been with his company for almost 8 years, and I'd gotten used to the travel schedule. I didn't love it, but it was part of the deal. We'd talk every night when he was away. He'd send me photos of whatever city he was in, and when he came home, we'd fall back into our routine. I trusted him completely. That trust, looking back, was probably my biggest mistake. It was a Wednesday night. He was in Denver for some conference, and I was home watching TV with a glass of wine, half paying attention to some reality show. My phone rang. His name popped up on the screen. I answered, expecting to hear about his day, maybe some complaint about hotel Wi-Fi or bad conference food. Instead, I heard nothing, just muffled sounds like the phone was in his pocket. A butt dial. I was about to hang up when I heard voices. A woman was laughing. It was light, flirty, the kind of laugh that made my stomach tighten, even though I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then I heard my husband's voice, low and warm in a way that felt too intimate. He said something I couldn't make out, and she giggled again. I kept listening, my heart starting to pound. There was rustling, movement, and then sounds I really didn't want to identify, but absolutely could. And then, clear as day, I heard him say it. I love you. I sat there frozen, my phone pressed to my ear, listening to my husband tell another woman he loved her. The sounds continued. I felt sick, but some part of my brain, the part that wasn't shutting down in shock, told me to record this. So I grabbed my laptop, called my own number from it, put both phones on speaker, and recorded everything. 7 minutes of audio that destroyed my entire marriage. When the call finally disconnected, I just sat there in silence. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I felt numb, like my body hadn't caught up to what my brain already knew. My husband was cheating on me, with Sarah, with his work wife, and he'd been stupid enough to butt dial me during it. He came home 3 days later. He walked in with his usual smile, his usual kiss on the cheek, asking how I'd been. I waited until he'd set down his suitcase. Then I asked him to sit down. He looked confused but complied. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording, and hit play. The color drained from his face within seconds. He tried to grab the phone. I pulled it away. He started stammering, saying it wasn't what it sounded like, that he could explain. I let the whole thing play. When it ended, I asked him very calmly to explain what I'd just heard. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Finally, he just put his head in his hands. He admitted it. He and Sarah had been having an affair for over a year. He swore it started as just an emotional thing, that they'd connected over work stress, and it spiraled from there. I asked him point blank if they'd slept together. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything, but I made him say it anyway. Yes, they'd slept together, multiple times, every trip to Denver, and a few other cities too. I felt like I was watching this conversation happen to someone else, like I was floating above my own life, observing it fall apart in real time. I asked him if he loved her. He said he didn't know. He said he loved me too, that he was confused, that he'd made a horrible mistake. He started crying. He begged me not to leave, said we could fix this, that he'd quit his job if I wanted, that he'd do anything. I told him to get out. He tried to argue. I told him if he didn't leave in the next 5 minutes, I'd call the police and play them the recording. He left. He went to stay with his brother, texting me constantly, sending long paragraphs about how sorry he was, how he'd go to counseling, how he'd never forgive himself. I ignored all of it. I called a divorce lawyer the next morning. But that wasn't even the worst part. While I was meeting with my lawyer, going through finances and figuring out next steps, I started wondering about Sarah. Who was she? Was she married? Did her spouse know? I did some digging, found her on LinkedIn, then Facebook. She was married, 3 kids. Her husband worked in finance and had no idea his wife was screwing her colleague on company time. I'll be honest, I thought about telling him, but I had a better idea. I went through my husband's emails. He'd been sloppy, keeping everything in his work account. There were hundreds of messages between him and Sarah, explicit ones talking about their future together, ones mocking their respective spouses. I forwarded a selection of them to their company's HR department, with a very polite note explaining that 2 of their employees were engaging in an affair that violated company policy and created a hostile work environment. HR moved fast. Within a week, my husband got called into a meeting. They'd investigated, confirmed everything, and decided on consequences. Sarah was fired immediately. Apparently, she'd lied on some reports to coordinate travel with my husband, which was a terminable offense on its own. My husband got reassigned to a different division. a demotion in everything but title, with a note in his file. His travel privileges were revoked. He'd have to work from the main office indefinitely. He called me furious. He said I'd ruined his career, that I'd gone too far, that what happened between us didn't need to involve his job. I actually laughed. I told him he'd ruined his own career the second he decided to screw his coworker. I told him he was lucky I didn't tell Sarah's husband, though I was still considering it. He hung up on me. The divorce went through relatively smoothly after that. He didn't fight me on much. I think he knew he had no ground to stand on. I got the house, a fair split of assets, and my freedom. He got his shiny new desk job and whatever was left of his relationship with Sarah, which, from what I heard through mutual friends, didn't last long, once the thrill of sneaking around was gone. It's been almost a year now. I'm doing better than I ever thought I would. I've got a new job, new hobbies, new friends who didn't know me as his wife. I started traveling on my own. Ironic considering that's what destroyed my marriage. But now when I'm in a new city, I'm there for me, not waiting at home wondering what he's really doing. I heard through the grapevine that he's dating someone new. Someone from his gym, apparently. I felt nothing when I found out. No jealousy, no anger, just a vague sense of pity for whoever she is. Because if he did it once, he'll do it again. That's just who he is. As for me, I'm thriving. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of being someone's wife, someone's backup plan, someone's fool, and honestly, I've never felt more free. The work wife wasn't the problem. The husband was. And now he's someone else's problem. Good luck to her. She's gonna need it. Thanksgiving was supposed to be normal, just the usual chaos of too much food, awkward small talk, and my mom drinking a little too much wine while insisting she was fine. We'd done this dance 1,000 times, but this year, somewhere between the pumpkin pie and her fourth glass of Chardonnay, my mom looked at me across the table and said the words that would blow up my entire life. "Your dad isn't your real dad." The room went silent. I thought I'd misheard her. I laughed nervously and asked her what she meant. She just stared at me with this glassy, unfocused look and repeated it. "Your dad isn't your real dad." My siblings exchanged confused glances. My dad, the man who raised me, who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and walked me down the aisle at my wedding, just sat there frozen. My mom started crying, saying she was sorry, that she never meant for it to come out like this. Then she got up and locked herself in the bathroom. I couldn't move. I couldn't process what had just happened. My dad looked at me like he was seeing a stranger, and I felt the same way looking back at him. The rest of Thanksgiving was a blur. People left early. Nobody knew what to say. I went home that night and didn't sleep. The next morning, I called my mum. She was sober, embarrassed, and immediately tried to backtrack. She said she was drunk, that she didn't mean it, that she was just saying things. But I wasn't letting it go. I needed the truth. After an hour of me pushing, she finally broke down and admitted it. She'd had an affair years ago before I was born. She got pregnant. She didn't know who the father was at first, but she had her suspicions. When I was born, she found a way to put my dad's name on the birth certificate without him ever questioning it. She said it was easier that way, that telling the truth would have destroyed everything, so she just buried it and moved on. I asked her if my dad knew. She said no. He had no idea. For my entire life, he'd believed I was his biological daughter, and she'd let him. She begged me not to say anything. She said it would ruin the family, that there was no point in dredging up the past now. I told her I needed time to think, and hung up. I couldn't just take her word for it. I needed proof. So I ordered a DNA test, one of those ancestry kits you spit into and send off. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just waited. 2 weeks later, the results came back. 0% match with my dad. He wasn't my biological father. The man who raised me, who I'd called Dad my whole life, had no genetic connection to me whatsoever. I felt like I was drowning. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about myself, was a lie. And my mom had known the whole time. I confronted her again, this time with the test results in hand. She cried. She apologized. She said she did what she thought was best, that she was young and scared and didn't know what else to do. She begged me again not to tell my dad. She said it would destroy him, that he didn't need to know, that some things were better left buried. I told her it wasn't her choice anymore. She'd lied for decades. She didn't get to decide who knew the truth. For weeks, I wrestled with it. Part of me wanted to protect my dad from the pain. Part of me wanted to protect myself from being the one to deliver it. But the other part of me knew that he deserved to know, that living in a lie wasn't fair to anyone, especially not to him. And here's where it gets absurd. I finally worked up the courage to tell him. I asked him to meet me for coffee, somewhere neutral, away from the house. I brought the DNA results with me. When I told him, he didn't believe me at first. He thought it was some kind of mistake, that the test was wrong. I showed him the paperwork. I explained what my mum had told me, and I watched his entire world collapse in real time. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. Not at first. He just sat there staring at the table, processing. Then he asked me if I was sure. I told him I was. He asked if my mum knew I was telling him. I said yes. He nodded slowly, thanked me for being honest with him, and left. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. When he finally called, his voice sounded hollow. He told me he'd confronted my mum. She'd admitted everything. He said he felt like he didn't know her anymore, that their entire marriage had been built on a lie. He told me he was filing for divorce. I started crying. I told him I was sorry, that I didn't want to be the reason their marriage ended. He said it wasn't my fault, that my mum made her choices a long time ago, and now he was making his. But that wasn't even the worst part. My siblings found out what happened, and they blamed me. Not my mum, the person who actually lied. Me. They said I should have kept my mouth shut, that I'd destroyed the family over something that didn't matter anymore. They said my dad would have been fine never knowing, that I was selfish for telling him. My younger brother stopped talking to me entirely. My sister sent me a long text about how I'd ruined everyone's lives for no reason. I tried to explain that he deserved the truth, but they didn't want to hear it. Then my mum disowned me. She called me cruel and vindictive. She said I'd betrayed her, that I'd chosen to hurt her on purpose. She told me she never wanted to see me again, and that as far as she was concerned, I was no longer her daughter. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. Things went from bad to unhinged. A few months into all of this, I got a message on Facebook from a man I didn't know. He said his name was David, and that he'd gotten my information from a DNA match on the same ancestry site I'd used. He said he thought he might be my biological father. He wanted to meet. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality where nothing made sense anymore, but I agreed to meet him. We got coffee. He was nice, awkward, clearly nervous. He told me he'd had a brief relationship with my mom years ago, and that when she ended things suddenly, he'd always wondered. He said he thought about reaching out over the years, but never did. Now that he knew for sure, he wanted a chance to get to know me, if I was open to it. I didn't know how to feel. This stranger was my biological father, but he wasn't my dad. My dad was the man who'd raised me, who was now going through a divorce and barely speaking to me, because the truth I'd told him had shattered his life. I felt guilty for even considering a relationship with David, but I also felt curious, and angry, and confused, and grieving for the family I thought I had. The father I thought was mine. I started therapy. I had to. There was no way I was processing this on my own. My therapist told me it was okay to feel everything I was feeling, that there was no right way to handle this. I cut off contact with my mum completely. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. My dad and I are still working on rebuilding our relationship. It's hard. He says he doesn't blame me, but I can see the hurt in his eyes every time we talk. He says he still loves me, that biology doesn't change that. But I know it's not the same. As for David, I'm taking it slow. We meet for coffee once a month. He's trying, and I appreciate that. But he's not my dad. He's just the guy who contributed DNA. The man who raised me, who loved me, who was there for every scraped knee and bad grade and heartbreak. That's my real father. Even if we don't share blood, I don't regret telling the truth. I couldn't live with the lie, but I won't pretend it didn't cost me. It cost me my relationship with my siblings. It cost me my mother. It cost me the version of my family I thought I had. And some days I wonder if ignorance really would have been bliss. But then I remember that the truth, no matter how painful, is still the truth, and my dad deserved to know it. Family secrets don't just hurt, they detonate. And if you think that's dark, wait until you hear about the brother-in-law who couldn't keep his eyes or hands to himself. It started small. My brother-in-law, Mark, had always been friendly, but about 3 months ago his texts started changing. At first it was just compliments that felt a little off. Things like, "You looked amazing at dinner last week," or "Your sister's lucky to have such a beautiful family." I brushed it off. Maybe he was just being nice. Maybe I was reading into it. Then the messages got weirder. Late night texts saying he was thinking about me. Comments about how we had a special connection. How he wished we could hang out one on one sometime. I stopped responding. I thought if I ignored him, he'd get the hint and back off. He didn't. One night, my phone buzzed at like 11:30. I figured it was my sister asking about something for Thanksgiving since we were hosting that year. Instead, it was Mark. A shirtless photo with the caption, "Been hitting the gym. What do you think?" I stared at my phone in complete disgust. This wasn't some misunderstanding anymore. This was intentional. This was him actively trying to cross a line with his wife's sister. I screenshot everything, every inappropriate text, every weird compliment, the photo, all of it. I saved it all to a folder on my phone. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, but another part of me knew this was going to detonate my family. My sister loved this man. They'd been married for 4 years, together for 7. They had a whole life built together, and I was about to drop a bomb that would destroy all of it. I thought about telling her privately, but every time I tried to bring it up, I couldn't find the words. How do you tell your sister that her husband has been hitting on you? How do you prove it without sounding like you're trying to ruin her marriage? So I kept putting it off, telling myself I'd find the right moment. Thanksgiving was a week away, and I convinced myself I'd wait until after the holiday. I didn't want to ruin it for everyone. Thanksgiving came. My whole family was there. My parents, my sister and Mark, my younger brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole extended crew. Dinner was going fine. We were all sitting around the table, eating, laughing, doing the usual family thing. Then Mark stood up to make a toast. He raised his glass and started talking about how grateful he was for his beautiful wife, how she was the love of his life, how lucky he was to have married into such an amazing family. Everyone was smiling. My sister was tearing up. It was this sweet moment. And then he looked directly at me and winked. That's when I lost it. That smug little wink while he was standing there praising my sister, pretending to be this devoted husband, knowing exactly what he'd been doing behind her back. The audacity was actually unbelievable. I felt my face get hot. My hands started shaking, and before I could talk myself out of it, I stood up. Everyone went quiet. My mom asked if I was okay. I said I had something to add to the toast. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots, and started reading his messages out loud. Every single one. The compliments, the late-night texts, the message that came with the shirtless photo. I read them slowly, clearly, so everyone could hear exactly what he'd been sending me for months. The room absolutely exploded. My sister started screaming, asking what the hell I was doing. Mark jumped up, his face bright red, saying I was lying, that I was trying to start drama for attention. My dad stood up and yelled at Mark to sit down and shut up. My mom was just staring at me in shock. Cousins were whispering to each other. My younger brother looked like he wanted to punch Mark in the face. My sister turned to me with tears streaming down her face and called me a liar. She said I was jealous of her marriage, that I'd always been bitter, that I was making this up to hurt her. I didn't say anything. I just walked over, handed her my phone, and let her scroll through the screenshots herself. I watched her face change as she read. The anger melted into confusion, then into devastation. She looked at Mark holding up the phone, asking if this was real. He tried to deny it again, said I must have faked them somehow, that he would never do that. She asked him about the shirtless photo. He went pale and didn't answer. She stood up, still holding my phone, and asked him one more time if he sent those messages. He finally admitted it. He said it didn't mean anything, that he was just messing around, that he never intended to actually do anything. He tried to say I'd been flirting with him first, that I'd led him on. I didn't even dignify that with a response. The screenshots spoke for themselves. My sister broke down, just completely fell apart right there at the dinner table. My mum rushed over to her, trying to comfort her, but she was inconsolable. She threw my phone at Mark and told him to get out. He tried to argue, tried to explain, but my dad physically escorted him to the door and told him to leave before things got worse. Then came the breaking point. After Mark left, my sister turned on me. She screamed at me for doing this in front of everyone, for humiliating her on Thanksgiving, for not telling her privately. My parents joined in, asking why I didn't come to them first, why I had to blow up the holiday like this. My mom said I could have handled it better, that there was a time and place for these conversations, and Thanksgiving dinner wasn't it. I just stood there taking it. I asked them when exactly I was supposed to tell her. When he first started texting me, when I wasn't sure if I was overreacting, after he sent the photo, after I'd tried to ignore it and hoped it would stop. I told them I'd been trying to find the right time and the right way, and then he had the nerve to wink at me during his toast like it was some kind of inside joke between us. I told them I snapped, and I wasn't going to apologize for exposing the truth. My sister told me to leave, so I did. I grabbed my coat, walked out, and drove home. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving alone in my apartment, wondering if I'd just ruined my relationship with my entire family. For 2 weeks, no one called, no text, nothing. I figured that was it. I'd done the right thing but lost my family in the process. Then my sister showed up at my door. She looked exhausted. She told me she'd filed for divorce, that after I left she'd gone through Mark's phone and found messages to other women too. I wasn't the only one. I was just the only one who said something. She apologized for not believing me, for screaming at me, for choosing him over me in that moment. She said she was humiliated and hurt and didn't know how to process it all. So she'd lashed out at me instead of him. I hugged her. We both cried. She asked me why I didn't tell her sooner. I told her the truth. I was scared. Scared she wouldn't believe me. Scared I'd ruin her marriage over something that might have just been him being inappropriate, but not acting on it. Scared of exactly what happened. She said she understood, but she wished I'd trusted her enough to tell her privately. I said I wished I had too. Things with the rest of my family are still weird. Some of them have apologized for how they reacted. Others still think I should have handled it differently, that airing it out at Thanksgiving was too much. My mum barely speaks to me. She says I destroyed the family dynamic and that holidays will never be the same. I told her Mark did that, not me. I just refused to keep his secret. My sister and I are okay now. She's healing, moving forward, building a new life without him. And me? I learned that sometimes doing the right thing costs you more than staying silent ever would. But I'd rather lose people who blame me for telling the truth than keep people who expected me to protect a lie. Sometimes exposing the truth ruins dinner, and sometimes it saves a life. But what happens when the family secret isn't romance? It's paternity fraud hidden in a photo. I found my dad's second phone by accident. I'd borrowed his car to run errands because mine was in the shop, and when I reached under the seat to grab my water bottle, my hand hit something hard and plastic. I pulled it out. A phone. Not his regular phone. A completely different one. Older model. Basic case. I sat there in the parking lot holding it, confused. Why would my dad have a second phone hidden under his car seat? I tried to unlock it, fully expecting it to be password protected. The screen lit up asking for a code. I tried a few random combinations. Nothing. Then, almost as a joke, I tried my birthday. 6 digits, month, day, year. It unlocked. My stomach dropped before I even knew why. Something about the fact that it opened with my birthday made the whole thing feel immediately wrong. I opened his messages first. There was only one conversation thread with someone named Claire. I scrolled up reading through weeks of texts, terms of endearment, I love yous, plans to meet up, references to their daughter. Their daughter. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking. I opened the photos. There were pictures of a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She had my dad's eyes. She had my nose. She looked like me when I was that age, like someone had photoshopped my childhood photos onto another kid. There were pictures of my dad with this girl at a park, at what looked like a birthday party, helping her with homework. There were pictures of him with a woman I'd never seen before, Claire presumably, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour, going through everything on that phone. Messages about parent-teacher conferences, photos from family dinners, videos of the little girl calling him daddy. It was a whole life, a complete separate life that had been happening parallel to mine for years. And I had no idea. When I finally drove home, I felt numb. I walked into the house and found my dad in his office. I put the phone on his desk without saying anything. He looked at it, then at me, and his face went completely white. He started talking immediately, trying to explain, but I cut him off. I asked him point blank if he had another family. He sat there for a long time before finally nodding. He broke down, started crying, telling me it wasn't supposed to happen like this, that it was complicated, that he loved both families. Both families. like that was somehow supposed to make it better. I asked him how long. He said 9 years. 9 years he'd been living this double life. 9 years of lying to my mum, to me, to everyone. I asked if Mum knew. He shook his head, begged me not to tell her. He said it would destroy her, destroy our family, that we could work through this privately. I looked at him sitting there, tears streaming down his face, asking me to keep his secret, asking me to lie to my own mother so he could keep playing house with two different families. I told him no. I told him he had 24 hours to tell her himself, or I would. He started panicking, saying I didn't understand, that there were things I didn't know, complications. I didn't care. I left his office and went to my room. He didn't tell her. 24 hours came and went, and he acted like nothing had happened. So I told her myself. I showed her the phone, showed her everything I'd found. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there staring at the photos, reading the messages, her face completely blank. Then she asked me to leave the room. I heard them fighting for hours, screaming, crying, things breaking. I stayed in my room with headphones on, trying to block it out. But that wasn't even the worst part. My mom kicked him out that night. He went to stay at Claire's house, his other house, with his other family. Apparently, he told Claire everything, about us, about my mom, about the fact that he'd been married to someone else the entire time they'd been together. Claire lost it. She showed up at our house 3 days later, screaming at my mum in the driveway. Neighbors came out to watch. It was a nightmare. She kept yelling about how my mum was the other woman, how she'd been with my dad first, how we were the ones ruining her family. My mum just stood there, exhausted, letting this stranger scream at her. The police were called. Claire left. But the damage was done. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. My mum's friends knew. My school somehow found out. I became the girl whose dad had a secret family. It was humiliating. Then my dad called me. He wanted me to meet my half-sister. Her name was Emma. He thought it would be good for us to know each other, since we were family. I almost said no, but something made me agree. Maybe curiosity, maybe some messed up sense of obligation. We met at a coffee shop. She was quiet, shy, looked exactly like the photos I'd seen. We sat there awkwardly for a while before she finally said she was sorry. Sorry that our dad was a liar. Sorry that I had to find out this way. Sorry that her existence ruined my family. I told her it wasn't her fault. She didn't ask to be born into this mess any more than I did. We started talking more after that. She was going through the same thing I was. Her mum, Claire, was devastated. She'd believed my dad was divorced when they met, that my mom and I were just remnants of his past he was handling. Turned out he'd lied to both of them in different ways. Emma had grown up thinking she had a normal family. Now she knew her dad had been lying to her every single day of her life. Things went from bad to unhinged. My dad tried to maintain relationships with both families. It didn't work. My mum filed for divorce. Claire kicked him out. He ended up in some studio apartment alone, trying to convince both families to forgive him. Neither would. He'd call me crying, saying he'd made mistakes, but he still loved me. I stopped answering. Emma stopped answering his calls too. He'd destroyed two families trying to have both, and ended up with neither. The divorce was brutal. My mum got everything. The house, most of his assets, full custody, even though I was almost 18. Claire filed a lawsuit for some kind of fraud or emotional damages. I don't fully understand the legal details, but it cost him more money. His job found out somehow, and while they didn't fire him, he definitely got sidelined from any promotions. Emma and I got closer through all of it. We'd meet up every few weeks, talk about the insanity of our shared situation. She was the only person who really understood what I was going through. We looked alike, had similar mannerisms, liked the same things. In another universe, we would have grown up together. Instead, we were strangers brought together by our dad's lies. My mum went to therapy. I went to therapy. Emma and her mum went to therapy. My dad, as far as I know, did not. He kept trying to reconcile with everyone individually, never taking real responsibility, always making excuses. He'd tell me that he loved my mum, but fell in love with Claire too. He'd tell Emma that he never meant to hurt anyone. He'd send long emails about how he was a flawed man who made mistakes but deserved forgiveness. None of us responded. It's been 2 years now. My mom is doing better. She started dating someone new, someone normal and honest. Emma and I are actually close now. We text almost every day, hang out regularly. She's the sister I never knew I wanted. My dad is still alone, still trying to get back into our lives, still not understanding that some things can't be fixed. The worst part is inheriting all of this emotional wreckage. I didn't ask for a secret half sister. I didn't ask to be the one who discovered everything. I didn't ask to be put in the position of having to tell my mum her entire marriage was a lie. But that's what happened, and now I'm left picking up pieces of a mess I didn't create. People ask me if I hate my dad. Honestly, I don't know. I'm angry, I'm disappointed, I feel betrayed, but hate feels too simple for something this complicated. He's still my dad. He's just also a liar who destroyed multiple lives because he was too selfish to make a choice. Emma feels the same way. We talk about it sometimes, late at night when we're both lying awake thinking about how different our lives could have been. We wonder if we would have been better off never knowing, but then we realize we'd still be living the lie, just without knowing it. At least now we have the truth. At least now we have each other. Double lives, double families, double the devastation. But at least my family drama stayed private. Unlike the next person whose relatives held a full trial behind their back. I was sitting at my desk on a random Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed, a notification that I'd been added to a group chat. I figured it was probably something work-related or maybe my friends planning another hangout. I opened it and saw the name at the top. Family Updates. Weird. I didn't remember being in a family group chat before. Then the messages started coming in, fast. My aunt was talking about how disappointed she was in certain people's life choices. My uncle chimed in agreeing. I kept reading, confused about who they were talking about. Then I saw my name, my actual name. They were talking about me. My stomach dropped. I scrolled up and realized this chat had been going on for months, and I'd just been accidentally added. Someone, probably my mum based on her tech skills, had messed up and included me in what was very clearly meant to be a chat about me, not with me. The messages kept coming, and I just sat there reading. My mom sent a long paragraph about how I was an embarrassment to the family, how I'd chosen a dead-end job instead of something respectable, how my boyfriend wasn't good enough, how he dressed poorly and didn't have ambition, how she couldn't bring herself to talk about me at church because what would she even say? My brother jumped in with a joke about me being the family failure. Laugh react emojis from 3 people. My aunt posted a meme, one of those motivational poster parodies, with text that was clearly directed at my career choice. More laugh reacts. They were having a great time. I felt sick. I kept scrolling, reading weeks of messages. Complaints about my weight, criticisms of my apartment, judgments about my friends, my cousin calling me selfish for not coming to every family event, my uncle saying I'd always been the odd one out, and it made sense I'd end up like this. Every insecurity I'd ever had about my family's opinion of me was right there, confirmed in writing. My hands were shaking, but I had the presence of mind to start screenshotting. Every message, every cruel joke, every dismissive comment, I captured all of it. Then I left the chat, quietly, no goodbye message, no calling them out. I just left and muted my phone. For 2 days, nothing happened. They didn't even notice I'd been there. They just kept talking. I checked the chat periodically from my screenshots, my stomach turning each time. Finally, on day 3, I saw my mum had messaged the group in a panic. She'd realized I'd been added. She'd seen that I'd left. The chat exploded, people asking how long I'd been there, my aunt insisting it wasn't that bad, my brother saying I was probably overreacting, my mom saying she needed to call me and explain. Sure enough, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Finally, I answered. She was crying, her voice shaking, saying it was all just venting, that families vent about each other, that I was taking it out of context, that they loved me and I needed to understand they were just letting off steam. She said everyone complains about their family members sometimes, and I was being too sensitive. I asked her if she really thought I was an embarrassment. Silence. Then she started backtracking, saying she didn't mean it like that she was just frustrated sometimes with my choices. I asked her if everyone else in the chat agreed I was the family failure. More silence. She begged me not to make this a bigger deal than it was. She said we could talk about it at Christmas, that we'd work it out as a family. I told her I wouldn't be coming to Christmas. Then I hung up and blocked her number. I went through my phone and blocked every single person who'd been in that chat. My mum, my dad, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, my cousins, all of them. Gone. Christmas came and I spent it with my boyfriend and his family. They were warm and kind and actually seemed to like having me there. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. My phone was blissfully quiet. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments, no walking on eggshells. Just a peaceful day with people who actually wanted me around. But that wasn't even the worst part. 2 days after Christmas, my boyfriend and I were watching a movie when someone started pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and my heart sank. My entire family was standing outside. My mom, my dad, my brother, even my aunt and uncle. They'd driven to my apartment to ambush me. My mom was calling my name, saying they just wanted to talk, that this had gone on long enough. I stood there frozen, watching through the peephole as they knocked and called out. My boyfriend asked if I wanted him to answer it. I shook my head. We just stood in silence until they finally gave up and left. I heard my mom say through the door that she'd keep trying, that I couldn't avoid them forever. I could, though, and I did. Months went by. I threw myself into my supposedly dead-end job and ended up getting promoted. Twice. My boyfriend and I moved in together, got a nicer place. I made new friends through work, built a life that didn't include people who mocked me behind my back. I started therapy and worked through a lot of the issues I didn't even realize I had around my family. Occasionally, they'd try to reach out. A letter in the mail from my mum. My brother creating a new social media account to message me. My dad showing up at my work once, which was mortifying. I ignored all of it. My therapist asked if I felt guilty. Honestly, not really. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying around this weight of trying to please people who were never going to be pleased, and I'd finally set it down. Years passed, I changed jobs again, moved across the country for an incredible opportunity. My boyfriend proposed. We got engaged, planned a small wedding. I didn't invite any of them. I didn't even tell them it was happening. Some mutual acquaintance eventually informed my mum, and she sent a long email about how hurt she was to not be included in my special day. I deleted it without responding. Then came the breaking point. Sort of. Except it wasn't a breaking point for me. It was for them. I'd been thriving. Genuinely, actually thriving. I had a career I loved, a partner who respected me, friends who built me up instead of tearing me down. And somehow, word got back to my family. Maybe through social media they were stalking. Maybe through mutual connections. Either way, they found out I was doing well. Really well. My mom reached out through a mutual friend, asking if we could meet for coffee. The friend said my mom seemed genuinely remorseful, that she'd grown and changed. I almost laughed. I told the friend no thanks. My dad sent a letter to my work address, a long apology about how he should have stood up for me, how he regretted not defending me in that chat. Too little, too late. My brother got married and sent me an invitation, had the audacity to include a note saying he hoped we could reconnect, that he missed his sister. I threw it away. My aunt got sick and my mum tried to use that as leverage, saying family needed to come together during hard times. I sent flowers to my aunt with a get well card and nothing else. They wanted back in. They wanted to be part of my success, my happiness, the life I'd built. But here's the thing they never seemed to understand. They didn't get to have it both ways. They didn't get to mock me, belittle me, call me an embarrassment, and then show up years later expecting forgiveness because things turned out well for me despite them. I'd built this life without them. I'd healed without them. I'd become the person I was always meant to be, and they had no part in that. They'd had their chance to be supportive, to be kind, to be family. Instead, they chose cruelty. They chose a group chat where they could tear me down and laugh about it. The worst part, or maybe the best part depending on how you look at it, is that I don't actually hate them. I just don't need them. I don't wake up angry. I don't spend energy resenting them. They're just people I used to know who showed me exactly who they were, and I believed them. And then I moved on. Every now and then someone asks if I'll ever reconcile with my family. They say life's too short to hold grudges, but it's not a grudge. It's a boundary. It's knowing my worth and refusing to let people back in who've proven they don't value it. It's choosing peace over performance. They had years to be the family I needed. They chose to be the family that mocked me instead. I chose to find my real family elsewhere. And honestly, I've never been happier. Being the subject of your family's secret roast is brutal, but imagine being the guest of honor at a funeral for someone who's still alive. I got the call on a Tuesday afternoon. My mum's number flashed on my screen, and when I answered, I could barely make out what she was saying through the crying. She told me Grandma had passed away. The funeral was set for Saturday. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My grandma and I were close, really close. She'd raised me half the time when my parents were working. I talked to her every week, and now she was gone, and I hadn't even known she was sick. I immediately started making arrangements. I called out of work, booked the first flight I could get, which wasn't cheap on short notice, and packed a bag through tears. My grandmother had been one of the most important people in my life. The thought of her being gone, of not getting to say goodbye, destroyed me. I spent the entire flight trying not to cry in my middle seat, staring out the window and replaying every memory I had of her. I landed Friday night, got a rental car, and drove straight to the hotel near the funeral home. I barely slept. Saturday morning, I put on the black dress I'd packed, did my makeup even though I knew I'd cry it off, and drove to the funeral home. The service was supposed to start at 10. I got there at 9:30, expecting to see family members already gathering, sharing hugs and memories. The parking lot was empty. I went inside anyway, thinking maybe I was early or had the wrong entrance. The funeral director looked confused when I gave my grandmother's name. He checked his book and told me there was no service scheduled. I showed him the message I'd received with the details. He checked again, apologized, and said there must be some mistake. No one had booked anything under that name. I stood there in this funeral home lobby, in my black dress, completely lost. I waited for an hour, thinking maybe I'd gotten the time wrong. Maybe everyone was running late. I called my mom. She answered sounding completely normal, cheerful even, asking how I was doing. I asked her about the funeral. There was a long pause. Then she said, "What funeral?" My blood went cold. I told her about the message, about Grandma passing away, about flying out here. She sounded genuinely confused and horrified. She said Grandma was fine. She'd talked to her yesterday. I felt like I was losing my mind. I asked who'd sent me the message about the funeral. She didn't know. I scrolled back through my messages and realized it had come from my uncle, my mom's brother. I called him immediately, my hands shaking. He answered on the third ring, and I could hear the amusement in his voice before he even said anything. I demanded to know what was going on. He actually laughed. He said it was a test. He wanted to see which family members actually cared enough about Grandma to show up if something happened to her. He said most people are all talk, claiming they love their elderly relatives, but never making time for them. He wanted to know who would actually be there when it mattered. I couldn't breathe. I asked him if he understood what he'd done. I'd flown across the country, spent hundreds of dollars, taken time off work, and spent 2 days thinking my grandmother was dead. He said that proved I really cared, that I'd passed his test. He sounded proud of himself, like he'd done something clever instead of cruel. I hung up on him and immediately drove to my grandmother's house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, alive and well and looking at me with surprise, I burst into tears. She pulled me inside, completely confused about why I was there and why I was sobbing. I couldn't even get the words out at first. She sat me down, got me water, and waited for me to calm down enough to explain. When I finally told her what my uncle had done, her face went from concern to absolute fury. She immediately called him. I could hear her yelling from across the room. She demanded to know what he was thinking, how he could do something so cruel, not just to me but to everyone he'd sent that message to. Apparently I wasn't the only one. He'd sent it to several family members. I was just the only one who'd actually shown up. And here's where it gets absurd. My uncle defended himself. He said he'd done everyone a favor by revealing who the real family members were. He said it was better to know now, before Grandma actually passed, who would be there and who wouldn't. He claimed he was trying to protect her from future disappointment. My grandma told him he was sick, that she didn't want to see him or speak to him until he got serious help. She hung up on him. The family group chat exploded after that. Some relatives were angry at my uncle, calling him manipulative and cruel. Others shockingly defended him. They said his methods were extreme, but his heart was in the right place. They said it did reveal something about people's priorities, that I'd dropped everything to be there, and others hadn't. My aunt even suggested that the people who didn't show up should feel ashamed. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They were defending emotional manipulation and fake death notifications because it proved some twisted point about family loyalty. I responded once saying that terrorizing people with fake funerals wasn't a test of love, it was abuse. Then I muted the chat. My uncle tried reaching out to me several times over the next few weeks. Calls, texts, even messages through other family members. He never actually apologized. He just kept insisting I was overreacting, that he'd had good intentions, that I should be grateful he cared enough about Grandma to do something like this. Each message made me angrier. I blocked his number. The family split pretty dramatically after that. Some people cut my uncle off entirely. Others maintained relationships with him but agreed not to bring up the incident. A few, the ones who defended him, I distanced myself from too. I couldn't look at them the same way, knowing they thought faking a death was an acceptable way to prove devotion. My grandma was horrified by the whole thing. She apologized to me over and over, even though none of it was her fault. She said she'd raised my uncle better than that she didn't understand where this cruelty came from. I spent the rest of that weekend with her, just talking and trying to process what had happened. She made me promise not to let this poison my relationship with her, or with the family members who'd also been appalled. I kept that promise. I still call my grandma every week. I visit when I can. But I cut off my uncle completely, along with the relatives who thought his stunt was justified. Life's too short to keep people around who think grief is a game and manipulation is love. The wildest part is that my uncle still doesn't get it. I heard through my mum that he brings it up sometimes, still defending his actions, still claiming he did the right thing. He apparently tells people I'm too sensitive, that I can't handle tough love. The complete lack of self-awareness is almost impressive. As for me, I'm doing fine. I processed it in therapy, worked through the anger and betrayal. I'm closer to my grandma than ever, which I guess was supposed to be the point of his twisted test, though not in the way he intended. And I learned a valuable lesson about which family members deserve my time and energy. Fake funerals, real heartbreak, and one unhinged uncle. But while OP's family weaponized grief, someone else's family weaponized their tuition money. I always thought my brother was one of the good ones. He was the kind of guy who volunteered at soup kitchens, organized community events, always talked about making a difference. So when he started a GoFundMe for what he called a scholarship fund to help underprivileged kids go to college, nobody questioned it. Our whole family donated. I donated too, even though I was saving every penny for my own college fund. I threw him $50 because I believed in what he was doing. I was proud of him. The GoFundMe did well. He shared it everywhere, posted updates about how the donations were coming in, talked about all the kids he was going to help. He even did a few local news interviews about his charitable work. My parents were beaming, their son the philanthropist. I remember my mum showing the news clip to everyone who came to the house. It felt good to be related to someone doing something meaningful. Fast forward about 8 months. I'm a senior in high school, getting ready to apply to colleges. I've been working part-time since I was 15, saving everything I could. My parents had also set up a savings account for me when I was younger, adding to it here and there over the years. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover at least my first year of tuition at a state school. I knew exactly how much was in there because I checked it obsessively. Around $12,000. Money that represented years of birthday gifts, summer jobs, and my parents' sacrifices. I logged into the account one afternoon to check the balance before filling out financial aid forms. The number on the screen didn't make sense. $237. I refreshed the page thinking it was a glitch. Same number. I called the bank. They confirmed it. The account had been nearly emptied over the past 6 months through a series of transfers. My stomach dropped. I went to my parents immediately, trying not to panic. I showed them the account statement. They looked just as confused as I was. My mum asked if I'd been making withdrawals. I told her no, I hadn't touched it. My dad pulled up his records. He hadn't made any transfers either. That's when my mum remembered something. The account was joint. It had my name and my brother's name on it. Years ago, when I was 14, my parents had gone on an anniversary trip for 2 weeks. My brother, who was 22 at the time, had stayed with me. They'd added him to my savings account temporarily so he could access money if I needed anything while they were gone. We'd all forgotten about it. He'd never been removed. He'd had access to my college fund this entire time. I felt sick. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, some mistake. So I called him. He answered all casual, asking what was up. I asked him directly if he'd taken money from the account. There was a long pause. Then he admitted it. He said he'd borrowed some of it and was planning to pay it back. I asked him how much. He went quiet. I told him the account was almost empty. He started making excuses. Turns out my brother had drained my college savings to pay off his credit card debt. $15,000 worth of debt from buying things he couldn't afford, funding a lifestyle he didn't have the income for. And the kicker, he'd also used some of my money to fund his so-called charity. The GoFundMe that was supposed to help underprivileged kids, that was mostly for show. He'd pocketed the donations, used some of my savings to make it look like he was doing something legitimate, and kept up the appearance of being charitable while stealing from his own sister. I confronted him in person. I needed to see his face when he explained this. He tried to downplay it at first, said he'd made some bad financial decisions and panicked. Then he tried to guilt trip me, saying he was going through a hard time and didn't know what else to do. I asked him about the charity fund. He admitted almost none of that money went to help anyone. He'd set it up to boost his image, to make himself look good. And when people started asking questions about where the money was going, he used my savings to create fake receipts and transfers. He thought he'd pay it all back before I noticed. He didn't. My parents were devastated when they found out. My mom cried. My dad yelled at my brother for over an hour. But when I said I wanted to report him to the police, they both shut it down immediately. They said he was family, that we didn't call the cops on family, that it would ruin his life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He'd stolen my future, and they were worried about his reputation. I told them if they wouldn't report him, I would. My mum begged me not to. She said it would tear the family apart. My dad said they'd figure out a way to pay me back, that we could handle this internally. But I was done. I didn't care about keeping the peace. I cared about what was right. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. I filed a police report. I brought all the bank statements, the screenshots of his GoFundMe, everything. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic. He said this kind of thing happened more often than people thought, especially with family. They opened an investigation. My brother was questioned. The GoFundMe platform was contacted. His financials were subpoenaed. The fallout was immediate. My brother hired a lawyer, started crying about how I was destroying him over a misunderstanding. My extended family got involved. Some of them thought I was being vindictive. Others thought my brother deserved whatever he got. Family dinners became war zones. People took sides. My parents were stuck in the middle, trying to defend both of us and failing miserably. The investigation confirmed what I already knew. My brother had committed fraud, both with the GoFundMe and by taking money from an account he had no right to drain. He ended up settling before it went to trial. He paid back about $8,000 of what he'd stolen, which was all he could scrape together. The rest was just gone, spent, vanished into whatever overpriced lifestyle he'd been funding. The GoFundMe platform refunded the donors and banned him. He also got hit with a fine and probation. My parents eventually scraped together some money to help cover what he couldn't repay, but it wasn't enough. I had to take out loans for my first year of college. Loans I shouldn't have needed. Loans that were only necessary because my brother decided his credit card debt was more important than my education. He got banned from family events for a while. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays. My parents said he needed to face consequences, but even then they defended him. My mom would make comments about how he'd made a mistake but was still my brother. My dad would say something about forgiveness and moving forward. They wanted me to let it go. I didn't. I'm in college now. I work 2 jobs to cover expenses, and I'm drowning in student debt. My brother occasionally texts me trying to apologize, but it always comes with some caveat about how hard things were for him, or how he didn't mean for it to go this far. He never takes full responsibility. He never truly acknowledges what he stole from me wasn't just money. It was security. It was options. It was the faith I had in him as a person. The worst part is watching my parents still coddle him. He shows up at family events now, acts like nothing happened, and they welcome him back with open arms. Meanwhile, I'm the one who made things awkward by refusing to just forgive and forget. I'm the troublemaker for holding him accountable. But I don't regret reporting him. Not for a second. He made his choices. I made mine. And if that makes me the bad guy in this family, then so be it. At least I can look at myself in the mirror. Stealing from family is low. Stealing from your sister's future is lower. But at least my betrayal came from blood. The next person's came from their boss's audacity. I'd been working at this company for 3 years, busting my tail, taking on extra projects, earning certifications on my own time and dime, doing everything you're supposed to do to move up. So when a senior position opened up in my department, I applied immediately. I was qualified. More than qualified, actually. I had the experience, the credentials, the track record. I felt good about my chances. The interview went well. I walked out feeling confident. Then a week later, I got the rejection email. They decided to go with an internal candidate who had more leadership experience. I was disappointed but tried to be professional about it. I asked for feedback, tried to figure out what I could improve for next time. They gave me the usual vague corporate speak about continuing to develop my skills and trying again in the future. 2 days later, they announced who got the position: my boss. The person I reported to had applied for the same promotion and beat me out. She sent a department-wide email talking about how excited she was for this new opportunity, how she looked forward to taking on greater responsibilities, all that stuff. I congratulated her like everyone else, swallowed my frustration, and kept working. Months went by. I watched her settle into the new role, getting praise from upper management, taking credit for department successes. It stung, but I kept my head down and focused on my own work. What else could I do? Then one afternoon, my coworker Maya pulled me aside. She looked uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure if she should be telling me something. She said she needed to show me something in private. We went to an empty conference room. She pulled out her laptop and opened a document. She explained that she'd been helping organize some files for an audit and accidentally came across the promotion packets from a few months back. The applications people had submitted when interviewing for the senior position. She'd seen mine, and then she'd seen my boss's. She turned the laptop toward me. I stared at the screen. It was my resume, my exact resume. Every project I'd listed, every certification I'd earned, every responsibility I'd detailed, word for word, but it wasn't under my name. It was submitted as part of my boss's promotion packet. She'd taken my resume, my work, my accomplishments, and presented them as her own. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Maya asked if I'd somehow worked on those projects together, if maybe there was an explanation. I told her no. Those were my projects, my certifications, my work. She'd stolen my entire professional identity and used it to get promoted over me. I made copies of everything. My original application, her application, side-by-side comparisons. Then I went straight to HR. I showed them the documents. I explained what happened. The HR rep looked uncomfortable. She said she'd need to investigate and get back to me. I left feeling like maybe, finally, someone would hold my boss accountable. The investigation took 2 weeks. When HR finally called me back in, I thought they were going to tell me they'd discovered the truth and were taking action. Instead, they told me they'd spoken to my boss. She claimed we'd collaborated on those projects, that it was a team effort, and that she had every right to list them on her application since she'd overseen the work. She said I must have misunderstood the nature of our working relationship. I asked them to check the project files, the emails, anything that would show I'd done the work independently. They said without clear documentation proving she hadn't been involved, it was her word against mine. And since she'd been with the company longer and was now in a senior position, they were inclined to believe her version of events. They said they appreciated me bringing my concerns forward but considered the matter closed. I sat there in disbelief. They were actually going to let her get away with it. She'd stolen my work, lied about it, and they were backing her because she had seniority and I didn't have a paper trail proving every single thing I'd done independently. The whole system was designed to protect people like her. I walked out of that meeting knowing I was done. I couldn't work for a company that would let this happen. I couldn't report to a boss who'd sabotaged me and faced zero consequences. So I started looking for new jobs immediately. Within a month, I had an offer from a competitor. Better pay, better title, better everything. I put in my 2 weeks' notice. My boss had the audacity to act surprised and disappointed that I was leaving. On my last day, I posted something on LinkedIn, a side-by-side comparison of my resume and the portions of my boss's promotion packet that were identical to it. I didn't name the company at first, I didn't name her. I just posted the receipts with a caption about how some people climb the corporate ladder on other people's work. I talked about what happened when I reported it, how HR sided with the person who'd been there longer instead of the person telling the truth. The post went viral, thousands of shares in the first few hours. People were tagging the company, demanding answers. Former employees started commenting with their own stories of similar situations. Current employees were messaging me privately, thanking me for speaking up. The company's reputation took a massive hit. Articles were written about toxic workplace culture and credential theft. Their stock even dipped. Then came the breaking point. The company's PR team went into damage control mode. They released a statement saying they took these allegations seriously and were conducting a thorough review. A week later, my former coworker Maya texted me. My old boss had been quietly let go. No public announcement, no explanation given to the team. Just suddenly gone. They'd clearly decided she was too much of a liability after the post blew up. My inbox started flooding with messages. Recruiters, hiring managers, people who'd seen the post and wanted to work with someone who had the guts to call out corporate BS. I got 3 job offers in 2 weeks, all of them better than the one I'd already accepted. I had options for the first time in my career, and it felt amazing. The kicker? About a month after my boss got fired, I got an email from my old company's head of HR, a different person than the one who'd dismissed my complaint. They said they'd reviewed my case in light of recent events, realized mistakes had been made in how it was handled, and wanted to offer me the senior position, the one my boss had stolen from me. They said they'd be happy to discuss compensation and start date at my convenience. I laughed out loud reading it. They'd let me walk away, backed the person who plagiarized my work, ignored my complaints, and now that it had blown up in their faces publicly, they wanted me back. I replied with the most professional version of absolutely not that I could write. I told them I'd found a company that valued integrity and actually investigated misconduct claims seriously. I wished them luck filling the position. I'm at my new job now. It's everything I wanted and more. My new boss actually respects my work. HR takes complaints seriously. And I learned something important through all of this. Documentation is everything. Screenshots, emails, project files, anything that proves your work is yours. Because there will always be people willing to take credit for what you've built. And sometimes, the only way to get justice is to take the receipts public. Career theft, corporate karma, and one LinkedIn post that changed everything. But imagine if your coworker didn't steal your work, they stole your identity, and somehow got you a raise. I got called into HR on a Tuesday afternoon, and I genuinely thought my career was over. You never get summoned to HR for good news, right? I spent the entire elevator ride up trying to figure out what I could have possibly done wrong. Did I miss a deadline? Send an inappropriate email? Accidentally violate some policy I didn't know existed? My hands were sweating when I walked into the office. But when I sat down, the HR manager was smiling. She congratulated me on my outstanding LinkedIn presence and industry thought leadership. I just stared at her, completely confused. I barely used LinkedIn. I'd set up a profile years ago when I was job hunting, posted maybe twice, and then forgot it existed. I told her there must be some mistake. She looked confused and pulled up her laptop, turning it toward me. There on the screen was a LinkedIn profile with my name and my photo. But the content was nothing I recognized. There were dozens of posts, all written in a professional, insightful tone about industry trends, leadership strategies, and innovative approaches to our field. Each post had hundreds of likes and comments, some had thousands. Companies were tagged, industry leaders were engaging. It looked like I'd been running a full-blown thought leadership campaign for months. I felt my stomach drop. Someone had been pretending to be me online. I told HR I needed to look into this and excuse myself. Back at my desk, I pulled up the profile on my own computer and started going through everything. The posts were well written, genuinely good content, but they definitely weren't mine. I scrolled through comments, looking for any clue about who might be behind this. Then I noticed something. Several of the posts referenced projects and initiatives that only a handful of people in my department would know about. Specific enough that it had to be someone internal. I started asking around casually, showing the profile to a few trusted coworkers asking if they'd seen it. Most were impressed, assumed it was really me. Then I showed it to Tim, a guy from my team who sat a few desks over. His face went pale. He stammered something about it looking great and quickly changed the subject. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. I waited until after work and caught him in the parking lot. I asked him directly if he created the profile. He tried to deny it at first, but I could see him crumbling. Finally, he admitted it. He said he'd been wanting to improve his writing and build confidence in sharing industry insights, but he was too scared to put his own name out there. He was worried people would judge him, that his ideas weren't good enough, so he created a fake profile using my name and photo, thinking it would just be a private practice exercise. But the posts started getting traction. People engaged with them. They went viral within our industry. He kept going, kept writing, kept posting, thinking he'd delete it all eventually. Then, apparently, my boss saw the profile, saw all the engagement, all the thought leadership, and assumed I was doing this incredible networking and brand building on the side. That's why I got called into HR, not because I was in trouble, but because I was getting a raise. My boss had submitted a promotion request based on my supposed LinkedIn presence, and it got approved. I stood there in the parking lot, trying to process what Tim was telling me. On one hand, I was furious. He'd stolen my identity, put words in my mouth, and built an entire online presence without my knowledge or consent. On the other hand, I'd just gotten a raise because of it. A significant raise. For work I didn't even do. I told Tim to delete the profile immediately. He nodded, pulled out his phone, and started the process right there in front of me. He apologized profusely, said he never meant for it to go this far, that he was just trying to build confidence and it spiraled out of control. He asked if I was going to report him to HR. I thought about it. Honestly, I thought about it for a long time, but then I realized reporting him would mean explaining the whole situation, which would mean admitting the LinkedIn profile wasn't mine, which would mean losing the raise. The math was pretty simple. I told him I wouldn't say anything on one condition. He had to stop immediately, delete everything, and never pull something like this again with anyone. He agreed. The profile was gone within the hour. Here's where it gets absurd. I kept the raise. HR never followed up about the LinkedIn profile. My boss never mentioned it again. As far as anyone knew, I'd just been doing exceptional work and deserved the recognition. Which, to be fair, I had been doing good work. I just hadn't been broadcasting it to thousands of people online under a fake profile. The whole thing felt surreal. I'd gone from thinking I was getting fired to getting a raise because my coworker had been ghostwriting thought leadership posts under my name. Part of me felt guilty keeping the money, but another part of me figured the universe works in mysterious ways, and if Tim's weird identity theft scheme resulted in me getting paid more, who was I to argue with fate? Tim avoided me for a few weeks after that. Eventually things went back to normal, or as normal as they could be, given what had happened. He never tried anything like it again, as far as I know, and I never told anyone the real story. Not HR, not my boss, not even my closest work friends. It was too bizarre to explain, and honestly, I didn't want to risk the raise. I did start actually using my real LinkedIn after that, though. Figured if people thought I was this industry thought leader, I might as well lean into it a little. I posted a few genuine updates, shared some articles, engaged with my network. Nothing went viral like Tim's fake posts, but that was fine. At least it was actually me. Looking back, the whole situation was absolutely ridiculous. Someone committed identity fraud that somehow resulted in me getting more money. It's the kind of thing that sounds made up, but I have the pay stubs to prove it. And honestly, while I don't condone what Tim did, I can't say I'm entirely mad about how it turned out. The weirdest part is wondering what would have happened if I'd never been called into HR. Would Tim have just kept going? Would the fake version of me have eventually become more successful than the real me? Would I have stumbled across my own profile one day and had a full existential crisis? I guess I'll never know. What I do know is that sometimes chaos works in your favor. And sometimes the universe has a seriously twisted sense of humor. I got a raise for work I didn't do, created by someone pretending to be me, and the only person who knows the truth is the guy who caused the whole mess. If that's not the definition of absurd, I don't know what is. So, yeah, that's the story of how my coworker's identity theft got me promoted. I kept the money, he deleted the profile, and life moved on. And somewhere out there in the LinkedIn algorithm, there are probably still remnants of those viral posts, forever attributed to me, written by someone else earning engagement I never asked for. The moral of the story, I honestly don't know. Maybe it's that sometimes the universe rewards you for things you didn't do. Maybe it's that identity theft occasionally has unexpected benefits. Or maybe it's just that corporate life is so absurd that even getting a raise can come with a completely unhinged backstory. Either way, I'm not giving the money back. Sometimes chaos works in your favor, and sometimes you just have to laugh at the absurdity of it all. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're officially part of the drama family. Sweet dreams, everyone, and remember, your life might be messy, but at least no one's pretending to be you on LinkedIn. Probably. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me which story broke your brain the most, and I'll see you in the next one. Sleep tight, and may your family group chats stay drama-free.